passing, but Senator Marshall was trying to stop it. Senator Marshall from the great state of Kansas, thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Matt, it's great to be with you, and I got to finish up your story you're just talking about on the Chinese. By the way, Congressman Mike Gallagher over there heading up that committee would be an incredible senator. We're trying to recruit a good candidate to help get the Senate back. He's one of the brightest young men I've ever met. Just absolutely a great person, a godly man. He would be a great candidate. So we're trying to recruit a good candidate. He's the guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we had him on last weekend on our Memorial Day special, and because he's the chairman of the China Committee, and he was breaking down all these different things that are happening with that. It's just really fascinating to hear him, because he's been deep in it for 6 months now, right? Like into the beginning of this year until now, leading this investigation into everything that the CCP is doing, and getting this guy to kind of give us the oversight and the overview of it all is pretty incredible. But anyway, so Senator, this week they obviously passed the debt ceiling deal. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, 63 votes in the Senate. I know you were one of the no's. Talk to us about why. Why were you no on this deal? What did you dislike about it? Why was it a bad deal?
Exactly. We were just back in the state last week. We probably did 15 roundtables. The biggest concerns in Kansas right now are, besides the drought, are inflation and a lack of people for the jobs that we have. This bill actually makes both of those problems worse. This inflationary cycle started with Joe Biden borrowing and printing money. This bill is going to add $1.3 trillion at a minimum of national debt this year. You can mark my words, it'll be more next year. And before we even voted on this, Chuck Schumer's already promising to spend more money to Ukraine. This borrowing of $600 billion a year is unsustainable. This bill is going to continue to fuel the inflation part of this. The second ask we had was some type of a work requirement. We wanted work requirements for SNAP and Medicaid. At the end of the day, we lost the Medicaid work requirements, and this legislation on the SNAP part actually makes it worse. If you have to read the fine print in this legislation, but there'll end up being more people on food stamps rather than less. Oh, and the third thing would be the regulatory issues. I would say that would be a top 5 concern back home. Our small business is just drowning in regulation under Joe Biden. Again, this legislation does nothing to really address it. There's some smoke, there's some mirrors, but it all disappears with dust in the wind. The regulatory changes are so bad, Joe Biden knows there's no way he can get his own pipeline through the regulatory process, so we have to give him the Mountaineer kickback to get his pipeline done.
Now, so, Senator, you offered an amendment to the debt ceiling deal. It didn't end up passing, but it was 46-51 was the vote against it. But the amendment would have been a lot like what the bill, the Secure the Border Act. Can you talk to us about this? What would this amendment have done, and why would it have made it any better? And what, I mean, while we're disappointed that it didn't pass and get onto the bill, 46 votes is a lot, and we get a few more senators in this next upcoming election. Maybe that's 51-46 the other way, right? Like, so, yeah. So, talk to us about this.
Yeah, so this was exactly the legislation that the House had passed. If this amendment had passed, it's on the way to the president's desk, and let's put Joe Biden on notice that the number one most immediate threat to our national security is the southern border. Very simply stated, what the House bill did and what our House and what our amendments did, provide 20,000 more Border Patrol officers, start rebuilding the wall, and add some other bits and pieces to it as well. So we were going to borrow $1.3 trillion from our grandchildren on Joe Biden's bill, but we can't spend $6 billion to secure our own border. We can spend $113 billion in Ukraine, and they're going to come back and ask for 30 or 50 more here in the next 2 weeks, and we can't spend $6 billion to secure a border. Matt, again, going back to my folks back home, they are numb from inflation. But everybody is concerned about their own safety and security like I've never seen in rural America. The cartel has a significant presence in Kansas right now. I mean, active cartel members in Kansas selling fentanyl, doing the human sex trafficking, all those things that they're known for. We're losing 300 young adults in America every day from fentanyl poisoning. pouring through our southern border. Look, I don't know how this president sleeps at night. I don't know how Mayorkas is still the secretary of DHS. I'm waiting on the House to impeach him.
Right. So Senator, hold on. I want to back up a second there. You were just saying there's active cartel members in Kansas.
Yes,
talk to
sir.
us about that. What do you mean by that? Like, what's operating there? How do we know this? Like, what is the administration doing anything about it? Like, I mean, where's our Secretary of Homeland Security? Isn't that what he's supposed to stop? Like, what's happening there?
Exactly. So I've done 3 big roundtables in Kansas, and at these roundtables, I invite the sheriff, the police, the DEA, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and there's some other federal organizations as well. And every one of them have confirmed that we have active cartel members in Wichita, Topeka, and Kansas City, and they've hired their drug pushers out there. It is easier to get fentanyl in Kansas than it is to have pizza delivered. For $5, you can have 2, maybe 3 of these fentanyl tablets delivered to a school near you. So when I just did another trip down to Colombia, South America, and to Panama, and I'm telling you, this cartel it has a free run through Mexico. Basically, they pay a little tax as they go through Mexico with the drugs. The cartel takes them off the Colombians' hands, off the Chinese hands, and they bring them straight from Texas up there's 3 highways that pierce Kansas, and in the center of Kansas, Interstate 70 goes east and west. So whether they're trafficking drugs or humans, Kansas is at this cross section. But I would wager to bet there is active cartel members in every state. On my border patrol visit, there was a significant number of cartels running these temporary shacks where they store the illegal immigrants after they cross the border. Yeah, so this cartel makes organized crime of 1930s look like amateurs.
This is terrifying, frankly. And again, you mentioned you're hoping that the House impeaches Secretary Mayorkas. Do you think that look, the Democrats control the Senate. They've got 51 votes. But do you think that if there is a Senate trial for Mayorkas, if and when we get to that point, there would be appetite among some of these Democrat senators, knowing what you're talking about here, that they might want to actually remove him? Do you think that might happen if and when the House moves on this? And I'm hearing similar things. I think the House is going to move on this in the coming weeks. I hope so.
Right. So if the House impeaches Mayorkas, the Senate has to have an impeachment trial. We don't have a choice, whether we have an appetite for it or not, unless they ignore the Constitution and the law. Now, is he going to be convicted? Probably not. But let's get these people that are progressives masquerading as moderates. Let's get them on record. Let's get these people that are up for election on record. Because I'm telling you, folks back home are concerned about their safety and security. And this is not just in big cities. It's in rural America now. This would be, it needs to be done is what I'm trying to say. And it would put this White House on notice. Even just when that impeachment trial starts, the White House is going to have to respond politically with policy. And my last trip to the border, my 4th trip there, I asked the Border Patrol, what can we do for you? Typically, it's more patrol officers, it's more resources, more doctors. This time it was policy. They said, look, all we need to do is go back to the Trump policy. No more catch and release. Let's go back to remain in Mexico. However you want to do it. There's 20 ways to skin that cat. But we need to go back to the remain in Mexico policies under Trump. Just the day we got there, 10,000 people crossed the border illegally, 3,000 gotaways in one day. There's now 6 million people in America that have illegally crossed the border since Joe Biden took over. This is an epidemic.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So, Senator, I want to shift gears here a little bit, too. For our listeners who are maybe unfamiliar, your background, you're a doctor in addition to being a U.S. Senator. When we saw earlier this week President Biden fall after giving that speech at the Air Force graduation ceremony, that was maybe we've seen him fall before, but this is maybe the worst one yet. And it was pretty bad. And then apparently he hit his head again when he got out of the the helicopter back at the White House. Just really really bad stuff. What's your opinion on this? I know, I doubt you've had a chance to like medically diagnose him or something like that. But
Right.
like just watching this as a physician, what do you think when you see that play out?
Josh. Yeah, I don't think you have to be a physician to understand when someone is failing. And he's at that magic age. We've all seen it happen to our parents, our grandparents, aunts and uncles. They kind of hit a magic age, and their frailty expedites that they become very frail. And once the mental aptitude goes down, it comes crashing down. All you have to do is even go back to the 2000 election, the few times we did see him, the 2020 elections compared to today. Just look at those side by side. You see a great physical change. He's more hunched over. His gait, the way he walks, is more stiffened. It's more like he's marching. His feet can't find the ground. It's called proprioception. I want to bore you. So you can see all those physical things happening, and certainly his mental aptitude is changing on a daily basis. It's an embarrassment. I'm embarrassed for America. President Xi, President Putin are sitting there watching all this. They see a weak president. They see a person who ran with his tail between his legs out of Afghanistan. They see him slow walking what's happening in Ukraine. They see him unable to be actually arming Taiwan ahead of the problem. And basically and don't forget what he's doing in Iran. He's basically turning our heads to Iran and say, go ahead and develop a nuclear missile. So we have to now rely upon Israel to take out that nuclear missile site as well. So this impacts us. Regardless of what my medical diagnosis is, the perception is he's a weak leader. And it shows every day, whether we're working on a debt crisis or national security.